Hello, welcome back to Biology Leap Review, Unit 4. So in our previous videos, we talked about photosynthesis and cellular respiration, and we learned that they are a cycle and that photosynthesis produces what cellular respiration needs. So the products of photosynthesis become the reactants of cellular respiration, and in turn, cellular respiration produces what photosynthesis needs. So the products of cellular respiration become the reactants of photosynthesis. And so one of the things that is continuously cycled during those two processes is carbon. So you notice that carbon dioxide shows up as a requirement for photosynthesis, and the carbon also ends up in the glucose that is needed for cellular respiration. But carbon cycles throughout the biosphere in lots of different ways. So I know you guys have heard of the water cycle, and you know that water molecules are constantly being recycled through the biosphere through the processes of precipitation and runoff, and then condensation. All of those processes continuously recycle our water molecules. So carbon is the same way. Carbon atoms that are on the earth today have always been here since the beginning of time. And so we don't get new carbon atoms. We just continuously cycle or recycle the carbon atoms that we have. So the carbon atoms that were inside of a dinosaur thousands and thousands of years ago could be inside of you to this day. So let's look at how those carbon atoms are continuously recycled in our biosphere. So in our atmosphere, let me get a text box. In our atmosphere, we have carbon dioxide. Okay, and so that is one place where carbon atoms are found, and they are stored in our atmosphere until some processes occur that take them out of the atmosphere. Well, the main process that takes carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere, and we know it because we just learned it, is photosynthesis. So in plants, on land, and in the water, photosynthesis is continuously taking carbon dioxide out of the air and storing that carbon in those plants. Okay, another way that carbon dioxide is taken out of the air is that some of it is dissolved in the ocean. And that happens when it rains, and just throughout the cycle, the water cycle, some of that carbon dioxide gets into the ocean water, and some of it is used by the little ocean creatures to make their shells. Okay, so now, once it is taken out of the atmosphere, lots of different things happen to the carbon to continuously cycle it. Cellular respiration is one of those things we just learned that uses the carbon dioxide, or uses the carbon stored in the glucose. Okay, so let's slow down a second and look at this. So carbon dioxide is absorbed in the process of photosynthesis, and in photosynthesis, that carbon, those carbon atoms are made into glucose. Okay, so in photosynthesis, glucose is made. Make this smaller. Glucose is produced. Okay. Goodness gracious. Sorry, I'm having trouble here. Okay, there we go. Photosynthesis, glucose is produced, and in cellular respiration, the glucose is broken down. So cellular respiration breaks down glucose. Okay, so the carbon then through cellular respiration can be released back into the atmosphere, right? And animals and plants do cellular respiration. So the plants break down the glucose and release carbon dioxide. I'll make this a little bit smaller, see if that helps. No, I didn't want that. Sorry. Let's do that. Okay. So cellular respiration by plants and animals breaks down the carbon in the glucose and releases carbon dioxide back into the atmosphere. Okay, so photosynthesis takes it out, makes glucose. The plants and animals break down the glucose and release it back into the atmosphere. So that's the cycle that we just talked about, photosynthesis and cellular respiration. And so that's constantly recycling the carbon in the biosphere. Another way that the carbon is recycled is through the animals, when they eat the glucose, and so they eat the glucose and they take in some of that carbon into their bodies. Okay, so they're eating the glucose, they're breaking it down, and when they breathe out, they release that carbon dioxide back into the air. But some of the carbon is stored in their body. Okay, so when also the plants store some of that carbon in their body as well. Remember, we talked about that the plants use some of the glucose. Well, they store some of that in the carbon atoms in their body. So when the plants and the animals die, which is called decomposition, the carbon is deposited into the ground. Okay. Okay. Now, when that carbon is left under the ground for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, it becomes fossil fuels. So fossil fuels are things like oil, natural gas, coal. Okay. So when animals and plants decompose down, when they die, they decompose, and the carbon that was stored in them gets deposited back into the ground. And then over thousands and thousands of years, that carbon is pressed down and compressed and becomes fossil fuels like oil, natural gas, and coal. Okay. So when we burn those fossil fuels, if you'll follow this arrow up, we burn those fossil fuels. It's called combustion, which releases carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. So if you'll look, there is more carbon going back into the atmosphere than there is carbon being taken out. And that's one of the problems with the carbon cycle right now. So the trees and the plants in the ocean and on land do photosynthesis, and that takes carbon out of the atmosphere. Okay, but cellular respiration by plants and animals puts carbon back in the atmosphere, and combustion from the burning of fossil fuels puts carbon back into the atmosphere. And so what's happening is we are cutting down an awful lot of trees on this planet right now. And so we're taking away the main process that removes carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. Okay, by cutting down all these trees, deforestation, our process of removing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere is being diminished. So, and we are steadily burning more fossil fuels for energy. We burn coal for electricity. We burn natural gas for energy in our homes. We burn oil in our vehicles, and gasoline is made from fossil fuels. So we're putting a lot of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, and we're cutting down trees. So we're preventing a lot of that carbon dioxide from being removed. So what's happening is there is an increase in carbon dioxide in our atmosphere. That is causing something called the greenhouse effect. So there is a certain amount of carbon dioxide that is necessary in our atmosphere. And because if we didn't have carbon dioxide in our atmosphere, our planet would be too cold to support life. So that carbon dioxide in our atmosphere is like a blanket around the earth that keeps it warm. If we didn't have that, all of the heat that comes from the heat energy that comes from the sun would bounce off the planet and go back out into space. But because of our atmospheric gases, one of those being carbon dioxide, some of that heat energy is trapped, and that keeps the earth warm. However, this blanket of atmospheric gases is getting too thick because of the excess carbon dioxide that is up there. And as that blanket is getting too thick, that causes the greenhouse effect. So our atmosphere is getting warmer and warmer, and that is one of the causes of global warming. So to slow this process down, this greenhouse effect, we need to plant more trees, stop cutting down so many. When we do cut them down, we need to replace them. We need to replant and grow them back, and find other sources of energy besides fossil fuels. And that will return our atmosphere, our biosphere, to a healthy cycle where carbon is cycled and balanced in the atmosphere. Okay, that's it for the carbon cycle. Thank you for your attention.